right, so we're here in my somewhat messy living room, a bit of a different change of pace, but I wanted to do a quick video. Often some of you will ask me if I could provide book recommendations on a variety of topics. And rather than just give you a list of books, which just isn't very fun, I thought it'd be interesting to just give you a video book recommendation like this, things you can read to learn more about the country in which you live. And so today, to mark this, I'm going to share a book that I really love by an historian that I think is great. This book is called Why the New Deal Matters by Eric Rauchway. Eric is an esteemed historian of the New Deal, wrote a wonderful book about the interregnum between the defeat of Herbert Hoover in 1932 and Roosevelt's ascension to the presidency in March of 1933, called Winter's War, and about that contest between the two men. Hoover, you'll forget this, Hoover didn't die until like the early 60s. He didn't like just vanish. He was a pretty vocal part of American politics for the decades following his defeat in the White House.
My good friend, your reception is indeed a demonstration of great friendship. It kindles a great glow in my heart. I had not expected to speak at this convention. In each of your last 3 conventions, I bid you an affectionate goodbye.
He's a fascinating guy and worth further study. Like, he was a bad president, but he's an interesting guy. Anyway, Rauchway's book is pretty straightforward. Why the New Deal Matters. It's a very slim volume, clocks in about 180 pages, and it's kind of a brief overview of the importance of the New Deal to shaping the modern United States. And I think what this book does so well is show you a picture of the pre-New Deal world, of the world before the American state took an active role in trying to address economic inequality and social dislocation. I think the book does a great job of illustrating the dire straits the United States was in heading into Roosevelt's presidency, close to a quarter of the country unemployed at the start of 1933, for example. And why, I mean, the book's called What the New Deal Matters, why Roosevelt's efforts were so vital and so important, and how they were not just Roosevelt's effort, but a collective effort of many, many Americans in Congress, in the White House, in the newly created administrative agencies in the states, working together to try to revitalize American democracy. And that is the key takeaway from this book, looking at the New Deal not simply as a set of policies like Social Security or the National Labor Relations Act or any of the financial regulation or any of these things, not just looking at the New Deal as a set of policies, but as a program devoted to the revitalization of American democracy, of showing Americans that the government is not simply in the capture of the wealthy and the powerful, and that it can do things. It can do constructive things for you. It can provide electricity to your home. It can build sidewalks. It can build libraries. It can paint murals. It can employ artists to make the world you live in beautiful. It can provide jobs for people who need work. And even though the New Deal is flawed in critical ways, the structure of the Democratic Party in the 1930s, the influence of the Jim Crow South in the Democratic Party means that the New Deal could not go as far as I think that Roosevelt may have wanted it to go, as many advocates may have wanted it to go. It means that critical benefits were left out to Black Americans. It means that in some ways, New Deal programs reinscribed and deepened forms of racial inequality. Like, all that's true. But what's also true is that even with the flaws, the New Deal program remade America into a more egalitarian place. There's a reason why the migration of Black Americans to the Democratic Party doesn't begin in the 60s or the 50s and the 40s. It begins in the 1930s. There's a reason why civil rights leaders like A. Philip Randolph thought they could work with Roosevelt. My favorite chapter in this book is one of the first ones. It is about the Bonus Army March. So prior to Roosevelt taking office, there was a march of World War I veterans demanding their bonus. They had been promised a bonus and they needed the money. It's the depths of the Depression. And Hoover directs the Army basically to clear out the camps these veterans had set up in Washington, D.C. It is this instant of the U.S. government deploying its armed forces against not just protesting citizens, but former soldiers themselves, in a really disgraceful episode in the history of the country. One of the dynamics happening here is that it wasn't just ordinary Americans who had lost faith in the system. Political elites had lost faith in democracy and were looking to Europe, looking at men like Mussolini, looking at men like Hitler, as perhaps the kind of leadership that might restore the United States to greatness. And some of these elites looked at episodes like the Bonus Army and thought to themselves, this is what is necessary. This kind of firm hand with the discontented masses is what's necessary. There has always been a class of American elites who have been seduced by authoritarianism. That was true then, it is true now. Roosevelt, though, Roosevelt believed in constitutional democracy. He believed in the ability of the people to govern themselves. And he believed in the power of the federal government to allow the people to govern themselves, to give the people the tools they need to govern themselves, to protect them from the kind of fear and want that is an obstacle to self-governance.
Third is freedom from want, which translated into world terms means economic understandings which will secure to every nation a healthy, peacetime life for its inhabitants everywhere in the world. The fourth is freedom from fear, which translated into world terms means a worldwide reduction of armaments to such a point and in such a thorough fashion that no nation will be in a position to commit an act of physical aggression against any neighbor anywhere in the world.
In fact, there's actually a very straightforward answer to why the New Deal matters. You should read the entire book, but there's a straightforward answer. And the straightforward answer is that the New Deal matters. The New Deal mattered because it was a new lease on life for American democracy. It was a moment of refounding of American democracy on different terms than had come before. Not simply terms of negative liberty, freedom from, but terms of positive liberty, a freedom to organize and to unionize, a freedom to live in comfort when you reach your old age, a freedom to have the kind of work that provides dignity. The New Deal refounded the American state as a bulwark against rapacious capitalism and held out the possibility that that state could help organize the country in a more social democratic way. I think in this moment, with our billionaire president and emerging class of oligarchs, it is important to know that the government doesn't belong to them. It is important to know that their visions of hierarchy and repression and of a dog-eat-dog world where everyone fends for themselves is not the only vision that is available. That there is a vision available to us that is egalitarian, that is based in solidarity, and is based in the notion that the United States belongs to its people, not to a small elite that just happens to have a bunch of money. That's why the New Deal matters. That's why you should check out this book. And I'll see you again sometime later with another recommendation.